Hey everybody, welcome to the Quick Draw. I'm Mike, formerly Orna Young Guns. With me is my co-host John at Kemuri Hidioku. And today we've got a very special guest, the very lovely, the very talented, good friend of the program and of mine, Stephanie MacWilliams, who's gonna join us in a great day of women bashing. Woohoo!
Not women, just feminists, which
Well,
are not always women.
And technically those are two separate things. Can we just say that right now?
Yes. And I'll make distinctions between, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back.
It's a pleasure.
Been a minute.
Okay, so apparently it's Women's History Month, which I
Neither
did not
of them
know.
Knew.
Yeah, I did not know that. Not until like a week ago. And it was funny because so my work did this thing where they like did this documentary about Black History Month, but they wanted to talk about women and women this. I was like, wait. So we're gonna hijack Black History Month and make it all about women? That doesn't. I was like, damn, liberals always be colonizing. Like, what the hell?
God.
Like, it was really awkward. It was really, really awkward, too, because it tried to not be political. And it was overall, I think it was positive, but it had Michelle Obama in it. So it couldn't not be political. And I was just like fidgeting in my chair and trying not to be like, well, actually...
Well, then again, Michelle Obama was like that portrait they made of Michelle Obama that looked nothing like Michelle Obama. And I think the reason why was because it was missing the red hammer and sickle headband and the AK-47. I think that's what it was.
I don't think she's actually a Marxist. I think she's just an angry person. And I don't know why she's angry.
And she's really obsessed with school lunches.
Okay, so they mentioned that. They mentioned that in the documentary. They talked about her and her very successful Let's Move, and what was the other thing that she did?
That was not successful.
I was like, nobody even heard about that. Like
making
what
them
success?
So no one liked them, so that they wasted food.
It. They never talked about it.
And the fact that she apparently, like any leftist, basically thinks that people are stupid. So there was this one. It was actually in my memories on Facebook. Isaiah, love it. Anyway, she had this thing where she was talking about how we need to change the nutrition facts on the food because moms are coming in and bewildered, wondering, should I be eating this? Have you ever seen a mom shop? Do they really read the nutrition facts? Nobody reads them. I was like,
I do. When I'm eating cereal. When I'm eating cereal, at that side label on the cereal box, I'm fixated,
as
man.
You're eating it. Believe me, by the time
I check it out. I check it all out, and I think that anybody can learn to read nutritional labels as they are. People just don't
but she
bother.
was like saying, "Oh, moms just give up in frustration because they're so hard to read." I was like, "That is such crap." No, they don't.
That racist?
I was like,
not only
it's just condescending.
Most people are just like you and are just like, who cares about nutrition? I'm gonna eat some like a bunch of like cheese and meat.
No, not me. That's Mike.
Protein. That's good for you.
I will not say anything. But anyway.
Paleo.
Oh yeah, I do like paleo. Well, I was gonna think
paleo or keto.
I literally don't even know. I just try not to eat too much.
I wanted to do paleo, but I can't give up rice. Sorry, it's not something.
Gotta have that right.
You know what? I'm of the philosophy that I will eat whatever the fuck I want. I will die happy, and then I will resurrect anyway. So I might as well enjoy life.
Exactly. See?
So how are you? So Steph, how are you gonna celebrate Women's History Month?
I'm going to celebrate it by going on Twitter and posting things about actual conservative women that I like. I tweeted a couple. I love the Nikki Haley photo. I tweeted that and was History Month. I don't think people probably really like that. It didn't go viral on the hashtag. But
a hat, a special kind of hat.
No, there will not be the special hat. Even
Why
though
do they call?
I do
don't know why do they call them pussy hats? Because I've seen the real thing. They look nothing alike.
Because they look like cats.
Pussy cat.
No, they look like a lady. That's the problem.
Are you really that unobservant?
Yes. Yes.
It literally is a cat, man. It literally has cat ears.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. At first, I thought they're really shaped like vaginas. I was like, oh, they look like cat ears. Oh, okay, I get it. That's like that's. I'm like,
I get it. I'm like looking at this thing. I'm like looking at the hats. I'm like,
I'm really tired. I've had a really long day. I felt like I'm just sitting here like, don't expect me to be that smart and usually go into my, passionate rants about feminism and how all of it sucked. But you're like, you know what? I'm feeling really smart and really okay about this podcast right now.
You know what, though?
Backhanded compliment if ever there was one.
Yep.
My favorite thing, however, in the last few years that has made me laugh hysterically has been the transgender movement. This relates to feminism for a reason, because transgenderism completely undermines the feminist movement and the gay rights movement, and it totally, but yet leftists have to pretend they're all the same, like they can't. You're not allowed to say anything bad about trans people because then you're transphobic, but yet they also realize, wait a minute, how do we stand for women's rights if we can't define what a woman is? Because it used to be women have the wonderful power, unique power of bringing life into the world. Now it's Planned Parenthood saying men have uteruses too. And so it's like, well, so women aren't special. What you're saying? What you're saying.
what I would say that too is that, I would take it a step further. It's actually that the whole doctrine is really self-defeating, right? When they say that gender is a social construct. Well, either gender is a social construct or trans people exist. They both can't be true. You can't say that it's a social construct and then say that there are people who are biologically inclined to, for whatever reason that it is, that there's a brain thing.
Right, yeah, but women's brain and man's body. I thought there was no such thing as a woman's brain. What the hell happened?
No, exactly. They can't both be true. And it's just one of those things that they're it's obviously not true. And it's not like they're trying to reconcile this. They're just like, we know, it's fine. Like they just ignore this. They're not even going to bother. I've literally never gotten
Akbar's voice in my head like through this entire show tonight.
What?
It's a trap.
Right. Which is funny, and then you have like the trans, what is it, trans women, the guy, the women with penises, the ones who basically try to go out and get mad at straight men because how dare you not think they're the same. Just because a woman has a penis doesn't mean that you can't, it's just a piece of flesh. It's no different than the other one. No, it's very different from the other one.
I hate the mentality of like, you have to want to sleep with me. It's like, come on now. And it's, and I try to be somewhat, nice about this topic. One of the rare topics I try to be nice about. Because I really do think that there's obviously something going on with people who are I think gender dysphoria is obviously a real mental. I just think it seems more likely to be some sort of mental problem or some sort of brain defect or something like that. I'm certainly not convinced. The alternative.
I've talked to people who are transgender. Or
yeah,
I know there's a distinction, and I can't remember what the distinction is.
Watch my show with Helena of Detroit. It's really, really educational and interesting. You'd like it.
But I've made friends who are transgender on Twitter who are transsexual as well, and like it's an eye-opening experience. And I personally feel like I can accept gender dysphoria. I can accept transgenderism, and I think if you understand it, it's really hard not to be compassionate. Because can you imagine being stuck, feeling stuck inside a body that doesn't feel like that? What kind of hell is that, right? Like that would be like your own personal hell to feel like you were perpetually stuck in someone else's body. But there's some conditions attached to that. Like, okay, I'll accept that you can feel like you're a man trapped in a woman's body or a woman trapped in a man's body, but you have to accept that there are biological distinctions. Like
that's why, and I think that, the people that I've met who, would identify as transsexual or transgender, but I feel like a lot of these people use the term transsexual because they feel it's a more accurate description. That people don't have a problem with anyone saying that, right? That they know that from the time that there is a difference, and it's not a normal thing. It's not just you wake up and decide what gender you are. It's something that is. It is ultimately clearly some sort of birth defect and then again I try to empathize in that sense while still it's a tough one for me, right, in terms of what to do about it and in terms of what I think our society should do. I think our society should not be encouraging this and should not be pushing it on kids. We should not be broadening this thing that I think is probably a very rare kind of mental health or some sort of brain thing, right? Some sort of biological brain issue. Because it is, I can envision from my own experience with mental health stuff, I can envision the pain it must be to feel that your own body feels like completely like it's attacking you, right? Like, I can see why that'd be hard. Obviously, I can't exactly get it, but I can see that, like, there's no way that is an easy thing. Like, I don't think, I feel like occasionally you'll see people and it's like, they act like they're just doing this to be like, you know, like sexual deviants and like, you know, like, it's like, no, I don't think anybody would just choose this, like, there's activists on Twitter who will be like, oh, I'm queer and like, you know, wear like, you know, androgynous clothes. But I don't think anybody that truly has gender dysphoria is just doing it for fun. Like, I think they're probably really suffering with something. But yeah, at the same time. Once you get
to the point where you're willing to cut off your penis, then that's when we need to start sitting up. You know what? Okay, there's a problem here.
There's something going on with you.
But here's my problem.
No, what is this, Steph? What is that? I know this ties kind of into the whole feminism thing because of like TERFs, right? Can you explain that to our audience?
TERFs would be the trans exclusionary radical feminists, is the term, and this is kind of I feel like this started kind of in the second wave era, kind of the post-sexual revolution, when people started talking about this all the time, where basically it's the group of feminists who reject the idea of transgender people being included within feminism because they saw womanhood as a biological thing, and that they felt that trans women were men appropriating womanhood. So they kind of seem to be disliked a lot by a lot of feminists, right? Because they're intersectional feminists. But then I also see a lot of people, I've seen people on the right kind of embrace them sometimes. And I'm kind of like, I feel like they're also misguided because they're still promoting a ridiculous ideology on top of it, right? Just because they happen to somewhat more agree with the, you know, biological reality of gender does not mean that I think that any of their other views are worth kind of, you know, aligning with.
Well,
based on that.
I don't want to hang us up too much on transgender, but I will say this. My problem with transgenderism has less to do with, because again, Mike, you know the guy I'm talking about on Facebook, who I'm constantly sparring with on this issue. And
you need to let him go, man. Just clean break. Just tell him you're not that into him. And
well, here's the thing.
Just a clean break. That's what you need, a clean break, my friend.
There is a problem between the idea, like I said, I'm not the person who, I may have a dimmer view on transgenderism than a lot of others might, but the fact of the matter is I'm tolerant, meaning if you want to believe you're transgender or believe that you're whatever, I don't care if you believe you're a turtle. It doesn't matter to me. As long as you don't come to me and tell me, now you have to accept it. No, I don't have to accept anything. You can be what you want. I will go on believing you're just crazy. If you want to tell me otherwise, fine, tell me otherwise. But the minute you try to force me to believe otherwise, we have a problem. And also, you know, the other thing I was going to point out was just, hey, he constantly tells me, well, people with gender dysphoria don't have, it's not a mental disorder. And, you know, it's not a mental disorder. So I said, you can't have it both ways. Because on the one hand, he says, they don't have a mental disorder, but on the other hand, they require your validation in order to not, as far as kill themselves. But I said, you can't have it both ways. You either have no mental problems, in which case you don't need my validation, or you do need my validation because there is something wrong with you.
That's where I chime in. That's actually true. I think that the thing that is always being pushed, right, is if we don't validate their view of themselves, that we're being intolerant and horrible towards them, and that we're causing them to commit suicide. Where I think that the suicide rate in that community is astronomical, right? It's a truly tragic thing. And, you know, and to me that there's something more going on, and the fact that it is still a terrible suicide rate, regardless of how tolerant the society is towards it. Right. Like, the suicide rate hasn't really gone down. Like, you know, so you're really telling me 50 years ago it was the exact same?
Right.
You know, now as it is now, with, you know, mass acceptance of you know, transgender people. And I think you raised a really good point about the kind of the nature of what it is to be tolerant. I think people think that being tolerant means you have to assent to everything that somebody else believes, when that's not the case at all. You can love someone and want to be, you know, decent to them. I don't try to tread carefully here, because I think that somehow I'm responsible if I say something mean to a transgender person that they're going to kill themselves. I think that's stupid. It's that I try to handle it with nuance, just like I would with any other medical problem, because it clearly is a medical problem. Like you said, like, you're not just oh, I'm just fucking great. No, you have an issue. So I'm going to be compassionate to that issue. Like, I'm not going to expect the whole world. Like, I've really suffered a lot in my life with like anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder. I do not go around expecting people to, you know, fall to the whims of my obsessive compulsive disorder when I'm going through a rough time. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's my problem in my brain. I'm not going to demand other people follow my stupid mental rituals or whatever. Like, and I feel like we do that with the transgender activists, and I think we need to not do that. It's I don't think it's helping anybody.
Now watch next week. Steph's going to start a cult, and you're all going to have to do exactly the opposite of what she just said.
Follow all of my
It'll basically
no, my OCD has been good. It's been good right now.
It's involved cleaning the same
room
vaping. Over and over again.
Well,
vaping has helped my OCD.
And Gray Wolf 76 here in the chat, you know, he brings up a good point that I was going to bring up too. Is I think Blair White has been a real powerful voice on that particular topic. Right. Blair gets a lot of shit for it too.
Yeah, he does.
Like, I genuinely feel bad, like, because I follow Blair, and I'll read through her stuff, and then I'll read the response, and it doesn't, like, most of it just strikes me as common sense. I don't know Blair's politics. I think Blair's conservative, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, she definitely leans strongly right. I don't know if she calls herself a conservative, but she has a lot of kind of right-leaning beliefs.
Okay, that was always my take. I don't know how far right you could consider Blair. Like,
I would say only
she doesn't strike me as like a.
She's not as far right as I am. Oh no, I'm not that either. But
no.
She doesn't strike
me as like a MAGA type. She doesn't strike me as a moderate. She's somewhere in a healthy there's like a healthy middle that she hangs out in.
Right-leaning centrist. She's not like, I'm a constitutional conservative. You know, like. You know, I think she
right, but most of the stuff that she says is pretty not controversial.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, but I don't, and I think I say more controversial things, to be honest. And the reaction that Blair gets is like, "Whoa, okay, let's take it down a notch, guys. Let's no, that threat's not cool. No, that's not cool either." And like, I cannot hang out on Blair's TL because it's just like it's depressing.
Yeah. Well, and moving more toward the feminist end, I was going to say there was an article from Daily Wire talking about 4 conservative women who, the minute they were known to be pro-Second Amendment, they completely just got, oh my God, just horrible things. And this is actually, to me, a common thing with the left, and I'll again stick with the feminist area, but this works on race too, is the idea that the left likes to claim it's anti-bigoted, anti-sexism, anti-this, anti-that, unless that person does not hold the approved views, in which case all bets are off. Look at what happened with Dana Lash, okay? You'd think for all the...
What happens with staff? I mean, being on her TL, like, holy shit!
So...
I've never white knighted so hard for someone, I swear to God.
But you managed to do it without being a condescending prick like a lot of leftists tend to be.
If he did it, I'd punch him. So
I'm totally joking.
Through the internet, right? But yeah, so.
But no, Steph and my relationship. I hate to interrupt, but Steph, I have to say this. Steph and my relationship is really funny because in 1 minute, I'll totally be like, "Hey, you guys need to back off," and in the next minute, I'll be like, "Steph, you're actually wrong on this. Let me write you 1,000." Let me write you like a 20 tweet thread explaining why you're wrong, or a 1,000-word article for your website that explains the alternative view here.
Well, and I think that feminism, like as we all know, has basically become that thing where it's like well, for starters, it's just it's condescending to women. I've noticed just how condescending it is because it literally seems to treat women as though they're these helpless little jewels. Oh my God, we can't.
It's not chivalry. It's almost like a warped kind of chivalry because it's not.
No, it's like women are pets.
It's not like if you saw a guy hitting a woman and you go in and kick his ass, which you absolutely should do if that happens.
No, nowadays it's like Justin Trudeau. You use the word man. Do you imagine?
It's like mansplaining. It's like mansplaining on behalf of the woman. That's what it feels like.
And that's the key feature is where and a good case, for example, I believe it was in Texas. I forget which university. Steph, you probably know it. Where this couple. The guy was accused of abusing her, and the girl was like, no, he wasn't. And the school just ignored her. Just completely ignored her, and they threw the book at him. They expelled him ultimately. He lost the scholarship, everything. And the entire time she's going like, he didn't do anything to me. And she's going to like anyone who'll listen, and they're just like, no, shh, it's okay, no, we'll take care of you. It's like, he didn't do anything.
I have a bit of a rant on this. I feel like I actually ranted to you about this on the phone, but I'm going to do it again. This whole thing, I think that this whole idea of, feminism treating women like, stupid children, it's rooted in the very core of feminist doctrine that has existed since the first wave, right? Because the presumption is that if you accept the most basic things that feminists believe, you'd have to accept things like, patriarchy theory, right? That the world is set up to benefit men at the expense of women. So if you accept that, it makes perfect sense why you see women as these kind of inferior children who can't do anything. Why? Because you have to accept that women, for hundreds of thousands of years of human history, who lived through incredibly tough things. You had to actually work extremely hard and do physical labor and raise children and like way harder lives than any women of the past few hundred years have had to live, especially the post-industrial revolution era have had to live. You have to accept that the only people who could save us from that tyranny were rich white ladies in England. And I find that utterly ridiculous to even think that. And it totally filters into today. You're accepting this insane premise of how men and women interact with each other from the very starting point, which is why I am so sick and tired of this thing with, conservative women being like, oh, like, and whenever I say this nicely because I know they mean as a compliment, people are like, oh, Stephanie's a real feminist because I actually, fight against Islam and actual things that actually oppress women instead of stupid nonsense. It's like, no, I'm not a real feminist. Like, feminism is not women's rights. Feminism is an ideological movement. It has been from the first day it started. Just because they had some actual rights-based grievances that were legitimate does not mean that their ideology that they used to push against that was a good ideology. Like, we need to abandon, move away.
I think, and I'll ask you to elaborate because, for my own sake, because I've never actually known the answer to this question because I'm too lazy to research it. I'll ask you to elaborate in a second about like first, second, and third wave feminism because I feel like those distinctions tend to be nonsensical, but it's funny you talk about the patriarchy. And the thing about, at least feminism today, and John and I talked about this whenever we talk about like racism or sexism or class warfare, it's all rooted in Marxism, right? The patriarchy is just some made up term because if they started calling it what they really meant, which is the superstructure, then they everyone would know, oh shit, we're dealing with Marxists. Like that's feminist theory is rooted in Marxist theory. Like if you understand the concept of the superstructure, what Karl Marx was saying is like, look, capitalism is fine, but socialism is better and communism is better than that. But we'll never get to socialism or even communism because there is this superstructure. There is this thing, this reified thing that prevents people from accepting the benefits and the pros of socialism and communism. And so we need to overthrow this superstructure because until we tear down the superstructure, we're never, ever, ever going to be able to get rid of capitalism and never able to evolve past capitalism. So that's why you see these movements. They utilize the language of oppressor and oppressed, right? Whether it's the working class versus the 1%, whether it's blacks versus whites, whether it's women versus the patriarchy. Which, how does anyone say that word unironically?
I think that
I seriously, you sound like a retard when you say
it's really embarrassing.
The patriarchy unironically. Like I say it to make fun of it.
There's a reason though that the patriarchy is actually a thing that does exist though. So I actually agree with you in terms of, especially today and the way that it's utilized, especially through academia and through culture, that it is to push Marxism. I do agree with that. However, I actually do think that a feminist type movement was very likely to actually develop organically just based on the reality of men and women as they really are and have been throughout history. Because you're looking at a patriarchy. There is a element of a patriarchal structure throughout human history, because it was necessitated by our biology forever that women would have a different role than men, and that men would, tend to, hold positions of leadership and things like that. And there are reasons for that. And it doesn't surprise me that the time that this kind of all emerged, I don't think it was necessarily that these so-called first wave feminists were, channeling Karl Marx as much as they were simply looking at the world they were living in and going, wait a second, trading with men would be a trade up. For the first time in history, you actually saw a chance where there were average women who looked at the way that men, and especially this was started by rich women, right? So they're looking at their husbands who had all this power and glory. It wasn't started by, the working poor or anything like that. And
their husbands are more likely to be in the same
exactly. They'd be doing something. Well, that's the thing, right? Because, and there's a reason it didn't start. The ego of this entire movement is so just incredible to me, because it's totally predicated on that. It's predicated on, we live in a society now in a really for the first time that women could trade places with men, where women could actually do the jobs men did. For most of human history, they couldn't. Think back 500 years ago. If you have to ride on a horse to a neighboring village to sell your stuff and risk, being attacked by a band of rapist marauders, there's a reason women didn't do that stuff unless they had to. Right. Women have worked throughout history, but it was almost never something that was a preferable thing to not working, or in working in, a more localized context, not a high paying fancy thing. It makes perfect sense. I think it emerged at the time it did because of the Industrial Revolution. It emerged at the time it did because for the first time, women were able to, through the use of technology that men created, were able to, overthrow the patriarchal tyrants, keeping them in their kitchens. I don't think it was any sort of heroic thing. And there's people, oh, you wouldn't have the right to vote. And like, no, women would have had the right to vote regardless. Women got the right to vote as soon as enough women agreed that they wanted it. The reason that
you actually see that in American history. That's what some people don't. It's funny. You talk to people in America about the 19th Amendment, and they talk about it like women couldn't vote before 1920. And it's like, no, there were several states.
Much more complicated than that.
There were several states that allowed women to vote. With the 19th Amendment did not give women the right to vote. And we could actually, if you want to, go into how about voting is not actually a right, but the 19th Amendment didn't give women the right to vote. What it did is it guaranteed that no state could prohibit women from voting, which was almost entirely Democrat and progressive states that didn't like that. They didn't want women
shock.
Voting. Yeah.
What a shock.
What a shock that slave states and progressive states didn't want women voting.
Some of the strongest critics of the suffragette movement were women, because voting has been strongly linked to military service, right? That was considered, a thing where there was actually a period, there were actually times in history in various countries where, that you had men going off to war without the right to vote, where women could vote in a couple of countries. It's absolutely crazy. But they saw this in America, for example, right? They saw that, or I'm sorry, in Britain, they looked at women having the right to vote, and they were like, wait a second, do we want this? Because there were additional responsibilities that were placed on men for voting purposes. It wasn't just like a free for all where all men could vote. It started with, property owning men, and it wasn't basically the way it's painted today is just like all men could vote forever and women weren't allowed. And then the feminists came along and like held signs and marched and like whined about alcohol. And then and then all women could vote. Like, that's not the case. It was the franchise of men and women was actually a really nuanced thing, and it varied by country. And I forget what the statistic is, but like if you look at the actual time between universal male and universal female suffrage, it's literally a blip in history. And the way that we presume that feminists caused that to change, I don't buy it for a second. Feminists just happened to see it. They actually had an issue and rallied behind it. It wasn't as though it wouldn't have eventually happened anyway, when women realized, oh, wait a second, we won't be expected to have the same responsibilities as men. Men love giving women shit for free.
Well, yeah.
Men take care of women, and it can be a good thing.
Free is kind of loosey-goosey.
You know what I'm saying.
We definitely want something in return. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of a quid pro quo there. But
you know what I mean.
And the thing is,
responsibilities aren't equal.
Well, and this goes to women. The irony is that today's feminism literally is destroying what I like to say, it's kind of the beauty and the dare I use the word sanctity of femininity, because it's literally trying to reject the idea that there's anything special about women. And this is the only reason, this is why I brought up transgenderism, because it is just the inevitable outgrowth of what happens when you decide to say that women and men are no different. Well, then what's the point of standing up for women's rights? Why do we need a first woman president? What's the point? I mean, honestly, what difference does it make, to use the woman who, at this point, what difference does it make? Well, that's a good question. I'm curious to know why we care so much if women and men are so interchangeable,
Now, Steph brought up an interesting point that kind of ties to that too. The idea that, gender roles traditionally have been determined in large part due to biology. Steph, were you saying that women are weaker than men? You sexist.
This little piddly arm,
pound, and that's biology. Pound for pound, women are weaker. You could have a 150-pound man and a 150-pound woman, same muscle tone in terms of like body fat percentage. The men would still be weaker because men are stronger. Sorry, thank you. Has to do with cross-sectional area of your muscle. Men have more muscle fibers per cross-sectional area than women. See, I did learn something in college.
That counts as engineering, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, that was biomedical engineering and biomechanics.
I know.
Anyway, so historically, women have had the roles that they've had, and men have had the roles that they've had because each was biologically better suited to certain things. Men make better hunters than gatherers, and women make better gatherers and child rearers than men do. What I find interesting, Steph, you brought up the point about how technology has kind of
leveled out.
It's kind of diminished that gap, but I still think there's a danger to throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying, well, because of technology, women can do the same thing that men can do. Because of advances in culture and civilization and tech, there's no reason why. And I agree with this sentiment. There's no reason why a woman can't be a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, an engineer, whatever. If that's your passion in life that you want to pursue, do that. If you want to be a makeup artist like my wife, do that. If you want to be a stay-at-home mom, do that.
You want to be a stay-at-home mom with a YouTube show who writes stuff?
Do that.
This is something that Jordan Peterson has brought up, and I've seen it even before I heard it from him. Like, for instance, there was a feminist in Australia, which she's insane, but she was honest. And this is important because the irony is the group of people that actually harms feminism the most are women themselves. Because, for instance, there was a feminist in Australia who was pointing out that left to themselves, what she wanted was equality in the workplace. That means women should be putting in as many hours as men. And she said, but left to themselves, women don't choose to do that. So she said, we must take the choice away from women if you want to achieve that. If we want to achieve that equality, which she did, then she actually put out a suggestion for legislation.
Marxist doctrine, equality of material.
Yeah, that made it illegal for women to be stay-at-home moms because her thing was, and again, but what she said is true. If you want to achieve that equality, just like the Newman interview when, oh God, I love that interview.
That was something.
But, like in the Newman interview, he said, if you,
I still haven't watched it.
Are you serious?
Oh, it's so good.
I know. I actually just got into like watching Jordan Peterson. Like somebody.
But that video is like.
I followed somebody on Twitter who was, I didn't know at the time that I followed her. She was a raging liberal / feminist. And like, she would always rant about Jordan Peterson. And I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And so I started watching some of the stuff that she told me to watch. She's like, watch this and you'll see it. And I'm like, I don't see what you see. Like, I'm watching this guy and he's not saying anything that is remarkably controversial to me. Like, sure, you could take it that way.
Not to you. I was going to say, not to us. But
it's not, but he's not saying anything earth-shattering. Yeah, but
no, he's not. That's the irony of it.
I like to think I'm capable of taking myself outside of my brain and looking at things more or less as a sane person who doesn't think like I do. right? I can't think like liberal because I'd have to be insane. I'd have to like have a psychotic break at some point in my life to be a liberal. But I can step outside my head and say, okay, what would a sane person who doesn't see the world the way I do, what would they think? And honestly, I look at him and I'm like, there's nothing ground shattering here.
But that's the point. There isn't. And the irony is there isn't anything earth shattering. The thing is maybe the way he words it and the way he talks about it is new. But what he's talking about isn't.
I like the way he talks though. It's very intellectual.
Here's the thing.
Sounds very smart.
But what he brought up in the Newman interview is also true. Left to themselves, women will not. There will not be equal outcomes. You will never get this. But
well, no, that's why I say that's why I say that was the point that I was getting to is, okay, yeah, we have these advancements in technology and culture that diminish the gap between men and women, and that's great. I love that. I think that's progress. I think we should definitely encourage that, but we don't need to throw out traditions and norms that work just because they aren't as urgent, right? You know, before you kind of had to have the gap that you did because life and death, it mattered.
Yeah.
Right. There's still value in those mores and those traditions.
Right.
And you know what feminists do is they break down these fences without ever understanding why they were built in the first place. And then to your point, like it ends up hurting women. One. Two, it makes women into the very thing that men want, which is a sex object.
Right.
You know, like all this women's lib, sex lib, you know, abortion. What does it do?
Well, 2 words.
It makes women do what men want them to do.
Or at least
guilt-free sex.
Well, shitty women anyway.
It brings out men's worst natures, I think.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it brings out women's worst natures, and it is really antithetical to our I would say our kind of, kind of God-given values that are within all people. But you can even say just from our biology, right? That it's not what women want to do. Women do not want what feminists tell us we're supposed to want. And you see that. And I find this really, really sad. Like when you look at the statistics about how many women wish they could be home with their kids more and wish they could work less. And it's like, we've created this world where it's like, and now because of the, mass rise of feminism, now the economy, it's almost impossible for a lot of people to just not have that life where you have to have 2 people working full time, paying for daycare all day just to survive. And it's like, if you're doing this because you want to do this, like, if you want to be a doctor and this is really important to you and that is the job you want to have, that's fine. For me, like I work from home, but I work because I love what I do. And if I had a husband, my alternative was, I'm going to go work at, I don't know, a clothing store all day just so I can prove that I have worth in society. Screw you. I'm not going to do that, because it is not serving my family. Right? What?
This is where I point out that John is single, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, unlike your brothers. He's always like, you want a nice Mormon brother?
I would not do that to you, Steph. I actually like you. I'm sorry.
No,
I love my brothers, but I like you more.
Like,
so
I love it. It's not. And anyway. I'm not saying that I have worked a lot of normal jobs, and I think there's value in it. And if you enjoy just being out and working, do that. Just clarifying that I'm not knocking normal jobs, but I'm saying that women, I think most women agree with me. I think most women would genuinely be happy that if they choose to work to enrich their lives, and of course their husbands should, support them in that. I think that's perfectly fine. If they work to enrich their lives, that is very different than the social expectation that you have to both work because reasons. And like someone like my mom, who was a stay-at-home mom,
the patriarchy, sister.
She got treated so badly when I was growing up, like, because this was like in the 90s, and it was still that kind of era of, you're just a mom. It's like,
right.
What do you mean you're just a mom? Like, she homeschools 3 kids, takes care of our home. Like, what is wrong with you?
Let's be realistic. Feminism hates motherhood. It does.
I wrote an article about that.
It does.
Almost that
because remember that article, because you wrote a response to it. But remember that one about that one feminist who said that, basically she despised all stay-at-home moms and thought they were like, an embarrassment to women.
Oh yeah, I do. I remember response.
But
you can check it out on our Facebook page, I think, right?
It should still be there. Yeah. Obviously we didn't take anything down. So that's the thing.
I couldn't tell who I wrote it for. It's been a while.
But feminists hate motherhood. They in fact, I would argue they hate parenthood in general. And this is now going into some personal experience for me, because they seem to hate fatherhood just as much as they hate motherhood. Because I've gone through the family courts. I have kids that I still to this day don't have custody of. But like because again the courts fought. But there's a local congressman that I interfaced with, and he was trying to start legislation to try to reform the family courts. The amount of resistance that we got was massive, and almost entirely from groups with women right in the name. League of Women Voters, National Organization of Women, like a bunch of local battered women shelters that again have women in the name. And their stance is basically that they say that men are by default, their general belief is that men by default are predators, they're wife beaters, they abuse their kids. So it's just one of those things that feminism has an effect on everything, and it hates the family almost entirely.
I think it is actually really dangerous too, that because you bring it up, like feminism was my kind of red pill into some of my other beliefs, right? Because that was the one thing that I just would look at from the kind of liberal perspective, leftist perspective, really, and be like, this stuff they're saying literally does not apply to my life in any way. I don't feel oppressed. I don't feel any of this. And the more I read about it, the more I'm like, this is insane. Like a lot of these things they're saying are just completely false. Things like the wage gap, things like that. But I think it is a foundational thing, because feminism is the biggest destroyer of the family. And, I look at their disdain for motherhood and for children. And it's like, I think it really is damaging to how people view things. I know that when I became a mom, the way that I looked at the world was really different, right? Because instead of just being this blip in human history, I'm just here and then I'm gone, I realized that no matter what I do with my life, like I will be leaving something to the next generation. And I don't want to leave a world that is worse than when I came into it. And I think it makes you think that way. And I think when you have this entire kind of culture of people who are just like, maybe I'll have kids when I'm 35, when I'm done, like boozing around for 10 years and then, marrying, and of course I made my mistakes. Like I'm divorced, like I'm a single mom, obviously. And, but I have that mindset. And I think a huge part of it is just because I'm a mom. And I don't think I could have understood that in the same way without being a parent, if that makes sense.
No, it does, because we're all parents here, and I think
love it.
I think every one of us goes through that. Because I remember when I had my kid, and I was freaking out because I'm like, am I ready to be a dad?
What do we do with this kid?
I'm still not ready to be a dad, and I got 2 kids, so they're
let Cammy handle it. You got this.
But I love being a dad. It's a lot of fun. I love being a husband too. That's a lot of fun. And and one of the things that I love most about my marriage, and you kind of touched on this stuff, is my wife can do whatever she wants, because I'm the head of the household. I go to work, I earn a paycheck, I help raise the kids, and so when I'm home and I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing work, and I'm not doing school, because those are things I do for my family, right? She can do makeup, she can, start a business, she can go to school, she can do whatever she wants, right? And that's what feminism is supposed to be fighting for, supposedly, but
I think we've been taught
fighting for the exact opposite.
Thing. We've been taught somehow that's a bad thing. And
I find this interesting. There was a study or a poll that came out recently about not only are millennials getting married older, they're having sex less. I believe that. And I kind of wonder what you see that.
I've seen that study. Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, yeah, and I kind of want. I'm starting to wonder now, just based on what we've talked about, if that has anything to do with, kind of the feminist movement and what it's done.
There you go.
I think that's part of it. I think the hashtag Me Too. You're not going to have sex if you're afraid to get accused of sexual assault later.
I think it's more than that.
Retroactively. Well,
but I think Steph, I think you're right. I think there's more to it than that. The feminist movement has pushed more so than any left-wing movement. I think they've really pushed for consequence-free sex, for a breakdown of the home, breakdown of the family. And especially like in the 90s and the early aughts, like people bought into it, I think. Right?
And reaping the rewards of that.
and everyone's miserable because of it now. It's nobody's happy because of that. And now millennials are looking at these miserable bastards and being like,
nah, yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah, hard pass.
Well, and I think a lot
swipe
of guys
right or swipe left.
Well, and here's the thing. But I believe that if I were a college age guy, if I could go back like 10 years or so and just have to deal with women like that are typically met on college campuses, I wouldn't want to have sex either. I'd be like, you know what? I'm not even going to waste. I don't even want to get anywhere near them. You know, because I've been researching at least a little bit. Have you heard of MGTOW? You heard of that stuff at all? MGTOW, men going their own way. But when I look at that, I don't agree with the philosophy, but I totally understand why it exists. I would, if I were younger and I were not as well versed in understanding, you know, if I didn't have a base like core, like a faith and a worldview that I do, I could see myself going that way. Because again, why would you want to deal with women who do that? With feminists being thick on the ground, you get to the point where you just assume every woman's out to screw you over. Basically, you just say, well, screw it. I'm just not going to bother.
Can I just say I'm glad I'm married and I don't have to do the whole dating scene anymore? Not to rub it in your guys' faces or anything. But
I don't believe in dating, so it's fine. I don't believe in dating. I think if you're with someone, you should be thinking about it like in terms of like, do you want to marry this person? And if not, then why are you wasting your time?
That's so funny. So I think I told you. I actually think I told you this story once. My philosophy on dating is very weird to people. When I was in college, I would date like multiple girls at the same time. And
yeah, you're like the opposite of me. I'm like, I could never do that.
But here's the thing. It's not like I was having sex. I wasn't having sex.
I don't care. I would be like, get the heck out of my face. Like, me or nobody.
I wasn't, no PDAs. Like the most affectionate it got is I was on the actual date.
It's emotional. It's the emotional connection.
Maybe some making out. But I was upfront about it. It's not like I was lying. And I'd be like,
oh yeah, you know what? I'm not knocking. If somebody is willing to be part of that sort of dating thing, then whatever works.
But
I would never.
I never understood it.
My process with this. I would date multiple women, and then once I found, to see what's out there, you cast your net. And then as you're dating, you're like, okay, I like this girl more than these girls. I'm going to start like dating this one exclusively. And then and when you get to that point, that's when you should be thinking about marriage. That's when you should be like, okay, can I spend the rest of my life with this person and be happy? All right, I think I can. I'm gonna try. We're gonna do a trial run here. I'm gonna do exclusive dating. Still not doing sex. Still not doing hanky panky. None of the stuff.
Still being Mormon.
well, if I had done what I was,
I don't know if I would say that. I was not either.
You're like kind of, yeah.
It's the same thing in my church, though. It's just again, I didn't do that. I just kind of bucked it when I was a teenager. So unification is for what's worth. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I didn't do anything. Yeah. I was not.
Yeah. But yeah, and I'm sure if I say unification, it probably didn't mean anything to you anyway. But anyway, the point is,
if I was single, like if God forbid something happened to my wife, I would be. I
hope she doesn't have to watch this show.
I would be like, that's the only because neither one of us believes in divorce, so she's stuck with me. Poor thing. But like, God forbid something happens to her, and I was like a widower, then I wouldn't know what to do. Like, I seriously would not like. I've had this conversation. I've had this conversation with her.
And she's
where we talk about
good luck.
Where we talk about like, okay, Mike, this is what you need to do if like I die. You're gonna take the girls to the grandparents, and they're gonna stay with them until you get your shit together. I'm like we have all these contingency plans, and I'm just like, okay, but after that, like, what do I do? Like, I won't know how to date in this environment. Like, I think I'll be like Miss Pinky here, and I'll just have a cat, and I'll die with my cat. Like that's. I'll have my cat and my kids, and that'll be it.
Hey, so the cat, that's you know what the cat's ears, like the ears.
Yeah, you already explained this to me. I got it now. It's crystal clear. It makes total sense now. I thought it was like a bird's eye view was supposed to look like something, but apparently it was a lot more obvious than that.
I see. Yeah, no, that wasn't okay.
That was a perfect brick joke layup, by the way.
Yeah, one thing you have to remember, well, Steph, you probably know, but I was going to say, as much as it's weird because I grew up being told I was so sheltered, but I'm beginning to think that he's the more sheltered one between the two of us, which is really funny because I always grew up thinking I was the one who was so sheltered.
No, I was totally sheltered as a child. What are you talking about?
I thought I was.
Kids, I went to an Episcopalian school growing up. And kids would talk about like porn that they watched from the black boxes that their parents used to steal cable. And like they would talk about stuff and I'd be like, what the hell is that? Like I have no idea what that is.
What's a porn?
And then I would like, yeah, I knew what porn was. I just didn't know half the stuff that was in porn. Like I knew it involved this, but apparently there's lots of variations of this that, that you just don't.
I don't like this, hand signals going on here.
It's okay, we're not monetized, whatever. I just and I go home and I'd ask my parents, and my mom would be like, Where did you hear that? Right. I was like, at that nice Christian school you sent me to.
I had a very interesting thing with mine. I really had these values for my entire life, and I just deviated from them because I'm an idiot. But, I was homeschooled, and my dad is very, very religious. My mom definitely supported his views in terms of, like sexuality and stuff growing up, at least. And, I had a very like open relationship with my parents about like sex related stuff. Like it was never weird. Like to this day, people are like, oh, you'd say that in front of your dad. And I'm like, I don't know. Like we're very, not like in like a.
So I thought I was really clever. I thought I was really clever as a kid. And because I never talked to my parents about I didn't talk to my parents about any of this stuff. And I look back and I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure after like 2 or 3 crusty socks, she figured it out.
Ew, I hate you.
Well,
you have a little boy, so it'll happen to you. So I'm just preparing you for the future.
Steph, I'll tell you this: if you want a short version of how my mom treated the idea of me dating or anything like that, let me put it in one quote she gave me when I was like maybe 15. It'll tell you everything. Treat all girls you meet as though they are poison. That's basically how it went.
Wow, that's not going to jade anyone. Holy shit.
So that was basically. She also told me not to marry an American. There was also that, but like
marry an American.
Well, because ironically enough,
that's what we need. By the way, that's what we need for Steph. We need to get her a nice American husband, so she can come and think with us.
Get me out of it. My mom's quote on this: actually, no, I don't think this was dating. I think this was her career advice. You can be anything you want in life as long as you don't become a stripper or a carny.
What if you became a carny stripper?
I think you just like explode.
I made myself throw up in my mouth a little with that one.
Oh my goodness. This is very productive. This is
not like a weird lady stripper.
It started off so productive.
Siamese twin strippers.
Oh God! Don't it. You're just making it worse.
My mind is so me from being a circus freak.
That reminds me, like when I was on my mission, they have gypsies in Chile. They call them gitanos, and oh my God, like this, like it was like talking to carnies. Like they're just like, oh, you're trying to steal from me. No way. I know I'm supposed to love you. I'm a Christian, but I can't talk to you. Go away.
I also don't want you within arm's reach, so you can't pickpocket me.
Seriously.
You're gonna get in trouble for this podcast. It's so racist.
Well, sometimes the truth is racist. So.
I probably shouldn't point out to Steph that there are pictures of me on a stripper pole.
Oh, why would you ever point that out to me? You're the worst.
Wait, was it that one? It looked like you were on like a really large like a party RV or something.
Okay, so yeah, I'll tell the story and then we'll wrap it up because poor Steph is. This
really devolved.
So my job was doing like a team builder, and they wanted us to go travel and see this office building that was in another city. So they hired they rented a bus, and it was supposed to be just a little travel bus to hold about 30 people. And somebody screwed up, and it ended up being a party bus with a stripper pole and laser lights and a disco ball and everything.
I'm like, we could get on short notice.
I was like, this is too good an opportunity to pass up. Here, hold my camera. So
I suppose you'll never be able to say "hold my beer," huh?
No, not in public anyway.
Well, you can do non-alcoholic beer.
Why would you want it? That's like drinking cat piss.
It's true. That's
like the whole purpose of drinking beer.
Have you ever
Nobody drinks beer for the taste. They drink beer to get buzzed. Me no. I tasted wine. I've never had beer.
He's a Mormon. You can't drink.
Well, I know, but I just wasn't sure how much he followed the rules. I don't think Mormons swear like fucking sailors either, but you know.
Actually, when you get a chance, Google J. Golden Kimball. You'll hear some. You'll read some great stories. He was an apostle. He was a Mormon apostle.
You'd be surprised to know, actually, you are not the only Mormon I know that does that. I know one other one.
That's really.
Well, my philosophy on that, because I speak 2 languages, right? And when I'd be walking through the streets of Chile, we would have little kids like, "Hey, gringo, fuck you!" I'm just like, the fuck you say? Well, we didn't say that because we were missionaries. We just kind of looked at them like that, and then, like one of my companions actually went up to one of those kids and was like, "Do you?" And he's talking to him in Spanish. He's like, "Do you know what that means?" And they're like, "No." It's like, okay, and I keep in mind he was a wrestler, tall guy, big guy. I mean, these are little kids, so of course we already look physically imposing in our suits and ties. So he's like, okay. In my country, if you were to yell that at someone, they would fight you. Do you want to fight me? He's like, no. And then we get the angry drunks that would be like, "Oye, weón, culiao, mijo de mierda." And I'm like, I have no idea what he said, but he sounds mad. And like at some point it dawned on me. It's like, really? There's like it doesn't offend me unless it's a word I've been trained to be offended by. And then we got to studying like the whole Vulgate Bible, which is based on the vulgar language, which is just means it's for the common man. I was like, oh, so if we call bad words vulgar, it's because hoity-toity aristocrats wanted to separate themselves from the common born, and so they made up all these stupid rules about what you can and can't say. Well, that's stupid. And then I learned in college later that, like, okay, so fuck is Germanic, right? We don't like Germanic words because those are short words. We like nice, long, flowery Roman words because Romans were the conquerors. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. So
you have a whole philosophy behind how much you swear.
I have a whole philosophy about why it's not a sin for me to swear.
I didn't really think it was a sin. I just found it funny because I don't ever hear Mormons swear ever. So
I just do it because honestly, I got to the point where I stopped caring. I don't swear that much because every time I do it, people are like, "Oh, I didn't know you did that." And I was like, "I thought I did it all the time." And they're like, "No."
It's funny because in the engineering department at BYU where I went to school, we'd swear all the time. I mean, you put 14 hours of work into a computer program that you're developing, and then something crashes and you lose all your work and it's due in 4 hours. You're just like, yeah, you're damn right. You're screaming "fuck" at the computer. Like, or, you hit your hand with a spanner. Like, there's just certain words that just make you feel better. And I had professors that would even joke about that. Like, when we talk about planning, the planning session of engineering, it's like, what are some things you need during the planning session? Someone's like a list of words to get the thing to work. And they're like, yeah, buddy. But then you'd get the women, like you'd get the engineering students' girlfriends from like the nursing department or the education department. They're all like Molly Mormons, and they come in and they hear swearing up the storm, and they're just like, "Oh my god!" Oh,
and I might add, since you're talking about,
which is why, by the way, I'm absolutely for more women in STEM. When there's like, when you're a single college student and there's like 4 women for every 100 guys. You're damn right. I want some more women in STEM. God damn it.
When I was in my A+ classes, and just so we feel like we actually spent more time on topic than we did, just to say that we had like no girls in our A+ class, we would have given anything for there to be girls in it. This idea that men keep women out of the STEM fields. Are you kidding me? Have you met the people in the STEM fields? They would die for more women being in those classes. You
being near them.
There was like maybe 10 girls. I think there were maybe 10 or 20 girls in a class of 400 students. Half of them were married.
Yeah.
And then half of the single chicks didn't look very good. And the other half, okay, you like, all right, you date them, but then you're competing. It's like 5 chicks for 300 guys, and you're just like,
I don't compete.
And this is why Mormons practice polygamy.
This ended well. That's great.
So anyway, I feel like we got a bit off on a tangent there.
But it's okay.
No.
You're literally talking about like carny strippers and then circus freak strippers. And this could not have been more off topic. I tried intentionally.
I have ADD, okay, which stands for attention deficit. Oh, look, a butterfly.
And then for me, it's like
whatever happened. Okay, I know we're going a little over hour, but I do want to ask this question. Whatever happened to ADD? Like, all I hear about now is ADHD. And when I was a kid, they used to distinguish between the two. Now it's just like, no, ADD doesn't. I was diagnosed with ADD, but I didn't have ADHD.
I'm surprised.
And ADHD, shut up. ADHD was the thing you didn't want to get. Like, that was like, oh, you can have a deficit disorder, but God forbid you be hyperactive, okay?
Too much to bear.
In my case, I was just a really crappy student, like, because I swear that the field of economics was waiting for me before I got there. Because my teachers I used to piss my teachers off all the time because I'm good at I pick up things, I learn things, but I'm not interested in good grades. So they'd be like all the time, you could be an A student, why aren't you? Because I'd be like, what's the point? What do I get out of it? It takes a lot more work than
kids watch this show. You're being a very well.
I'm sure my kid will watch it eventually.
God, not.
I would say I freaking hope not.
Right, but no, I was like that.
We are very bad role models. Do not do this.
This is your concern. Like, this is your moment to go. But think of the children.
Right? No, because I said if my son is like me in school, I don't have a good argument to tell him why he shouldn't be. He'd tell me, well, why do I need to be an A student? I'd be like, you know what, son, I don't know. I was like,
getting us back on track so we can wrap this up on a feminist note.
Right.
Steph, can you break down for us real quick? So first wave, second wave, third wave feminism. What's the difference?
Okay, so these are obviously a little bit of muddy descriptions. It's not like an exact year this started or anything, but the first wave would be the kind of suffragette movement, the women's suffrage, and then we move into the second wave would be the sexual revolution era, the birth control and bra burnings, and kind of the early precursor to the slut walk. The third wave is kind of a weird one because I feel like it's a pretty broad range of time. Everything from the kind of
like the 80s on, we'll say.
Yeah, I would say so. But it really, I feel like it should be a distinct one in the like 2000s and onwards, because you're seeing, I would say the intersectional feminist movement is kind of distinctive from the 80s and 90s third wave. But generally it's all feminism. So.
But it's all cancer.
Yeah.
It's all cancer. We can all agree on that.
I'm an anti-feminist, not a real feminist. I'm an anti-feminist.
Yeah. Well, the biggest feminists have always been people that have championed individual rights, right? If you believe in equality and you believe in rights, you're going to create an environment where men and women are substantively equal. They may not be materially equal, but whatever. They're not equal in biology. So
I guess the simple question: do you think Christina Hoff Sommers is a feminist?
I don't think she's a feminist in any meaningful sense of the term. So
okay.
She's like the one feminist I like for that reason, because she doesn't accept anything of feminist doctrine. It's like a Catholic who doesn't believe in communion. I mean, it's cool. You can call yourself whatever you like, but it's like it's the same thing I feel with people is like, oh, like that guy is a really cool Muslim. It's like, okay, that's nice, but like, would he be killed? Like, you know, like it's the same thing. And it's,
would they stone him to death? That's the real point.
If yes, then I'm on board. So,
there you go.
Imam Tawhidi on Twitter.
Yeah, they if you can be like, can we plunk you into Mecca and be like okay with it? Okay, then you're a Muslim, and if we can't, then I don't really care what your opinion is. Just like Christina Hoff Sommers being hated by all feminists and they literally call her like an anti-feminist, and she's not anti-feminist enough. Like she's too soft. But
right.
in my view.
Well, she's a Democrat, so
yeah. I still like her though. She's
I know, so do I. She's pretty sane.
But like she's not a real feminist.
Well, thanks, Steph, for coming on. We love having you on here. This is a lot of fun. We'll definitely have you back on to.
I need to go to bed.
Maybe we can Muslim bash the next time that you're on the show.
I have to catch up on your
show. Islam bash. Only we'll bash some of the Muslims for following Islam.
Well, I gotta catch up on your show too, actually. So.
Oh yeah, no, her show's great. Definitely, if you want to see more of Steph, watch her YouTube channel, Right Millennial. It's a lot of fun. She has some great guests. They have some great discussions. Awesome. So, and then Steph and I always talk about stuff, and then it ends up bleeding out into my Twitter. So
yeah, very
awesome. We just inspire each other. That's what friends do.
I love it.
So we'll definitely have you back on again, Steph. Be sure to catch us next week. I don't even know who our guest is next week, but we'll figure it out. And you guys have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Have a good night.